Have you ever wondered what was out there in the night sky? Stared up at the stars in the hopes of seeing something out of the ordinary? Have you ever heard unexplainable noises coming from a vacant room, or watched a shadow cross the wall in front of you? Have you asked yourself if there's life after this one, or if you had life before? What about strange creatures that are mythical and elusive? Have you experienced deja vu, or felt a prompting to leave because you felt you were in danger? What if tomorrow you were on the fringe? Welcome to On the Fringe. I'm Philip.
And I'm Mark.
And obviously, you guys see Miss Notebooks herself, Jess, and the always wonderful to be around Pam. You guys just need to start introducing yourselves. You guys are part of the show now.
Yeah, yeah.
You just don't want to put in the work.
I know it.
Hello, Enzo.
What's up,
Hi,
Enzo?
Enzo.
Yep. Man, we got a fun show for you tonight. I brought it up to Mark last week.
Last week, yeah.
Last week. I brought it up to you, and he's like, man, I got to tell the girls. They're going to have fun with this one. So we're going to have fun tonight. We're going to discuss the legend of Indrid Cold. I want to keep saying Ingo Swann, but I know it's like two totally different people. I wish that Ingo Swann might be fun too. Hey, Chris.
Hi, Chris.
Hi, Chris.
Ingo Swann may be fun to look into, his prophecies, stuff like that. But for some reason, I just want to keep saying Ingo Swann. But anyway, real quick, we're gonna run this ad, and we'll be right back.
Hey, this is Mark with What If Tomorrow and What If Tomorrow on the Fringe. Be sure to check out our website, whatiftomorrowmedia.com, and look at our cool merch. We've got t-shirts, hoodies, posters, and more. Our affiliates are Duke Cannon, EMP Shield, My Patriot Supply, and Conflicted the Game. Or check out buymeacoffee.com/whatiftomorrow and buy us a coffee. And as always, be sure to like, comment, and share on both Facebook and YouTube. It helps get our content out to others and help our channel grow. Now on with the show.
All right. Hey, I'm gonna introduce this because Mark and I were talking I was trying to find a good narrative story and to kind of read to introduce Indrid Cold to anybody that may not be familiar with it. And hey, Alicia. So I was like, you know what? Instead of searching, I'm just going to punch it into ChatGPT. So I did. So we'll give them the credit. The first story, I was like, wait, what's up, Willie? But so the first story I did, I was like, man, it's a cool story because I put in there Indrid Cold encounter written in a narrative form, and it was a pretty cool story, but it wasn't really.
It seemed really pretty made up.
Yeah, it didn't really go along with the story. But I'm going to actually read this one because this one's pretty right on. So I'm going to start it off with the encounter between Indrid Cold and Woodrow Derenberger is a well-known incident that is often cited in UFO and paranormal literature. The story goes back to November 2nd, 1966, when Woodrow Derenberger was driving home from work in Parkersburg, West Virginia. According to Derenberger's account, he saw a strange object in the sky that resembled a cigar-shaped craft with lights. That's the only spot that I kind of found wrong, but it was close. The craft seemed to descend, and soon after, a figure appeared in the road in front of his vehicle. The figure was described as a tall man, over 6 feet in height, with a dark complexion and wearing a shiny metallic suit. The man approached Derenberger's car and communicated with him telepathically. The being identified himself as Indrid Cold and claimed to be from the planet Lanulos. Cold spoke in a gentle and soothing voice, which calmed Derenberger's initial fear. They had a conversation where Cold spoke about various philosophical and otherworldly topics. After this encounter, Derenberger claimed to have several more meetings with Indrid Cold and even met other beings from Lanulos. He shared his experiences with local authorities and became a central figure in UFO lore. Some people believe Derenberger's account, while others dismissed it as a hoax or a product of an overactive imagination. The incident and the character of Indrid Cold have since become part of UFO and conspiracy theories, often associated with the Mothman phenomenon and other strange occurrences in Point Pleasant, West Virginia area during the same time period. It's important to note that there is no concrete evidence to support the authenticity of these encounters, and the case remains largely anecdotal. As with many UFO and paranormal accounts, it remains a subject of debate and speculation among enthusiasts and skeptics alike. I thought that was a pretty good write-up for it.
It really was not bad.
Yeah, so, what we got here? So, yeah, I mean, the cigar shape, I guess you could get away with that because the stories that I've heard, and you guys correct me if I'm wrong, it was more of an oil lamp lens-shaped vehicle.
Flared at both
really
ends, yep.
Yes.
Right. It really wasn't that far from the story. Hi, Sylvian. But yeah, I mean, this is a fascinating story. I've heard about it. I watched a really good video on it here last week, and that's what I was like, dude, we got to do this. We got to do Indrid Cold because of Hellier, and we're going to get into a lot of this stuff, guys, because of Hellier and other places that I've heard it. I just can't pull them off the top of my head to hear about, to know where I heard about it.
Mothman.
But it's a fascinating story. Mothman. It's all connected. I mean, really, it is. So, Jess, I'm going to start with you. What is your take on the Indrid Cold story?
Well, I'm not going to say it's true, but I'm also not going to say it's false. There's a lot of different people who have kind of supposedly been witness to Indrid Cold. So, first of all, before we start, is there music playing in the background, or is this just
There
me?
is. Do you want me to turn that down?
I hear
Could we? Because
it
it's really loud in my ear.
Oh, I am so sorry. Let me take care of that. It's off.
Wow, that just tells me I'm really deaf because I can't hear it.
The sound of silence. Okay.
I can sing it. If
Don't make me sing.
I was just like. So our first contact with Indrid Cold is through John Keel. You don't see him until John Keel brings him to light. And well, of course, Woody Derenberger, who was the first one to encounter Indrid supposedly, of course, made it well known before, well, not well known to the world, but to his little area before John Keel got his hands on it and stuffed it in with his Mothman Prophecies book. But it needed to be stuffed in. A lot of people think that he just kind of threw it in there for fun, but it was actually going on at the exact same time that all the crazy sauce was going on in Point Pleasant and Mineral Wells, where Woody was from, was only about 55 miles away. Another largely unknown thing is that Flatwoods, West Virginia, where the famous Flatwoods monster came from, it was very busy with activity at the time too. And if you pull up a map of it, you'll see that those 3 points are all just about an hour away from each other. It creates this big old triangle for triangle lovers. So there's that. So I kind of disagree with John Keel on some of this stuff. So John Keel originally, before giving him his name, called him the Grinning Man. Previous to the Indrid Cold incident with Woody, there had been several incidents leading up to that where people had encountered people that weren't quite right, that had dark skin and wore odd clothing and had really weird smiles. And when he heard about Woody's encounter, he assumed this was all the same person or being or alien and named him the Grinning Man. And I'm going to have to completely disagree. If you go back and read those original encounters those other people had, they look completely different. The very first one, the man that was seen was like almost 7 feet tall. He was extraordinarily tall, and was kind of hulking, where Indrid Cold was supposed to be very short and very slight and kind of pointy featured. So I think John Keel kind of was grasping at straws for that one and he continues this through the book. All of these sightings, if you go and read them, all in that area, a lot of people were seeing these dark skinned creatures with kind of beady eyes, but they all look different. And if it's true, if all of these sightings were true, I think they were probably seeing all the same race of creature, not the same exact one. Because later on, he just starts calling them all Indrid Cold. And I don't think it was that at all.
Well, that seems reasonable.
Kind of did, where he thought he was more of a not a specific person, but more of a race, almost like you said.
Yeah,
and he did go ahead and just pretty much call everybody that fit that mold.
Well, he did refer to himself as we when he introduced himself to Woody.
Yeah, and supposedly that's what his race did. They were all very much about the we, and everyone helps everyone, and all good intentions and things. So they would speak about each other that way. One race instead of just a one person or being. Excuse me.
They're like the nice board. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah.
There were a lot of Marxist ideas in the story,
and there was
very much
for sure.
And a lot of the descriptions, I would expect a extraterrestrial craft to not have switches and dials and stuff. He describes stuff like that being that was standard for the day. So I don't know. I could go either way. I want to say that there was probably at least one definite incident with Woody, but I wonder how much of it has gotten stretched all out of proportion.
Embellished. Yeah.
Embellished. Yes, that's the word I'm looking for.
Yeah. I would tend to agree with that.
Do we want to tell the story so anyone who's watching or who is going to be watching who maybe don't know who Indrid Cold is?
Yeah, I think that's a great idea.
Simple understanding. Yeah. So we first hear about Indrid Cold in John Keel's book, The Mothman Prophecies from 1975. And I'm sure everybody has seen the movie with John Gere in it. Indrid Cold is included on that movie, but not in any type of fashion that he was involved in the book. And I can't even remember exactly how he's added in there. It's something weird. But he comes in. Yeah. He comes in on chapter 5. And the thing about, I'm going to give a heads up to anybody who wants to read Mothman Prophecies. And I say that you do. It is one of the most interesting books I've ever read in my life.
It's good. Yeah.
Even if none of it is true, which can't possibly be because there's too many corroborating stories and things throughout it. Now, John Keel was known to stretch the truth a little bit. And frankly, between me and y'all's there, he had a way of getting too wrapped up in the stuff. And Pam and the guys know that I actually call it getting keeled out. If I get too much rolling on some of this paranormal stuff and too many coincidences start happening and synchronicities start happening and I start getting steamrolled, I call it getting keeled. You need to back off for a little while and just drop it.
She does.
Kind of what he did.
He took a lot of artistic license.
He did. This book is going to switch back and forth. So you're going to go between Mothman happenings, Men in Black sightings. It's going to skip back to Woody and Indrid Cold, and then it's going to skip here and it's going to skip here and skip there. But stick with it. it will absolutely make sense towards the end, because what he's really doing is building up a timeline. You just don't realize he's doing it until you're almost completely done with the book.
Cool.
Yep. Enzo
There
said
you
Mothman
go.
Prophecy is one of the first books I read after seeing my first UFO as a kid.
It's awesome.
Especially if you grew up relatively close to that area.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, oh, that's right. Enzo is from like the Kentucky and all of that insanity. So jealous. Okay, so back to the storyline, so everybody know what is going on here. So Woody Derenberger was a just a regular old kind of Joe Schmo. He worked with appliances and stuff in Mineral Wells, West Virginia. He was about 50-ish at the time that this happened. He was actually on his way back from Parkersburg, where he worked, back into Mineral Wells. I think it's only like a 20-minute ride. It was dark. It was nighttime. He was heading back home for the evening. He was in some heavy traffic, and he watched what he thought had been a vehicle behind him pass over the top of his truck and land in front. It came down. He said it looked kind of like an old flute for a kerosene lamp tilted on its side. So imagine it's thin on the edges, and then it gets kind of bulbous in the middle. He said it came down in front of him, and he had to slam on his brakes, and a door just kind of opened on the side of it, and this dude stepped out. He said he was pretty regular looking. He was a little short. He was a little slight. Had kind of a tanned type of skin to him, not dark, but tan. And he said he actually started speaking to him within his head, almost as if he kind of knew what this guy was thinking without him opening his mouth. Asked him in his head to roll down his window. And a lot of people think, why would you have to roll down the window if you're speaking telepathically like this? But apparently that night it was a downpour of rain. And Woody later on said that he couldn't see anything through the window for all the rain washed over the top of it. So he rolls down his window and he has this conversation telepathically with him. He was like, "Don't be scared of me. I'm here not, I'm not going to do you any harm," and starts asking him just the most ridiculous questions. He actually pointed off towards Parkersburg and the lights, and, he was like, "What do you call that?" And Woody was like, "Well, that's a city. That's where, we live and work." And this dude who had by this time told him that his name was Cold, Cold, said, "Well, we call them gatherings." And it started this whole little weird exchange with him. He ended up telling him, which I think was really interesting, and this is one of my little points of contention with this, told him that he wished for Woody to tell the authorities, and he says this, tell the authorities what has happened here tonight, tell them all about me, and I'll corroborate your story later.
You let everyone think you're nutso, and
but why would you say that? Why would you be like, you tell the authorities about me, and I'll come back later on and be like, yeah, it's true? No.
That almost sounds like the government gaslighting you.
Well, there's also a theory that that Mothman and all of that was a failed rescue attempt on Indrid's part. And if so, maybe that's why he wanted the authorities told, was so it would get out there further, that he was there. I don't know.
Try to get somebody's attention.
Yeah, you could get more people's attention if you let the authorities know, for sure. So
that makes a certain amount of sense.
Anyways, going on, because there's more to this insanity here. So the interesting thing about this Indrid Cold guy, and he did learn his first name very soon after that. Indrid, Indrid, Cold, Cold. Dude wasn't dressed too irregularly. He was wearing a dark top coat with like dress pants. The only odd thing is that Woody said that he could see just inside the little lapel area there that he was wearing some really weird metallic green material, which was a little odd. I make note of this because if you go back and you read a lot of the other stories where people had encountered people in this area at this time, these odd dark-skinned people, they almost always mention a green or blue metallic material underneath the regular human clothing. People who did not know each other. So that's an interesting point.
Yeah.
Right there.
Or shiny coveralls.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this goes beyond John Keel. Now, John Keel has very nicely put in all of these stories that he's collected. But if you go and you look them up beyond John Keel's telling, you will find some of those same stories told through other authors or news reports or even TV and radio reports. And it's the same. They're all wearing these shiny green or, shiny blue things underneath their clothes that nobody quite knows what they are. So interesting point. So Cold told them to confirm his sighting to the authorities, which he actually did. He went home, unnerved as heck, told his wife what had happened. His wife was like, "You've got to call the cops." So he does. And this is where another oddity comes in that I think is a huge red flag. So he calls the cops. He's like, "This is the crazy that happened to me tonight." And they're like, "Come in tomorrow." And they do like a 3-hour-long interview with him. They believe everything he says, so much so that they contact the local newspapers and the radio stations and the TV stations and turn this into a huge thing. It was nationwide. It made nationwide television. So I don't know about you all, but anytime somebody comes up with some kind of cockamamie alien story, I have never once heard of the police out and out saying, "This guy is legit," and then helping to get a hold of all of these stations and stuff and making this person famous. This is the only time I've ever heard of this. So another red flag for me. What it means, I don't know.
Government conspiracy.
Maybe. So he becomes a celebrity every night. His front yard and backyard is full of stargazers waiting for the UFO guys to come back. And funnily enough, if you follow along with John Keel's version of it, Indrid Cold shows up many times after that, completely, well, not even in disguise, just wearing what he usually wears, and just walks right in on the property to visit Woody, and nobody notices because he doesn't look like a average, like little gray alien.
Yeah, they're looking for an alien.
Exactly. So, and Woody thinks this is hysterical that he just walks right through the crowds and comes in and visits. And he slowly starts getting introduced to some of the other characters in Indrid Cold's life, which I will let Pam get to here in just a little bit. But I kind of want to touch base. So very important to this story, to the Indrid Cold story, is the fact that while this is going on, Mothman is in full form in Point Pleasant and the surrounding areas and around Mineral Springs or Mineral Wells and Parkersburg and Flatwoods and that entire area. Not only that, so we also have regular UFO sightings. We have the Mothman sightings. We have petrosaur sightings. We have dogs going missing. We have light anomalies happening. And we have Men in Black out the wazoo. Men in Black as far as the eye can see.
Do I recall something about there being something on a local military base going on too?
Well, that's in Point Pleasant. So that's the old ammunitions area and stuff.
Yeah.
Where it was kind of like the headquarters for Mothman and all of that insanity that happened there. All of this is going on at the exact same time that Woody is having all this contact with Indrid Cold. And Indrid Cold is also making comments on what is happening in the areas around too. So it's kind of all one and the same. I think Mothman, for some reason, he was a large part of it, but Indrid Cold and some of the other stuff was almost bigger, but got kind of pushed under the rug in honor of Mothman. And I think it was not John Keel's meaning to do so, but I think it was his fault. Because he named his book after Mothman, and I think that gained more popularity than anything else. But all of this was literally going on at the same time. So if you're going to talk about Indrid Cold, you have to mention Mothman and Point Pleasant and all of that hullabaloo. Let me look at my notes here.
I forget the date, but I know it was in the same area. The Goblins of Kentucky, or isn't that the same? Pretty close to the same area.
Hopkinsville.
I don't know if it's the same
Goblins.
time.
It was that was in the 50s, I think, wasn't it?
Was it the 50s?
I think so, yeah.
It was about a decade before, but that whole area out there is just thick with anything that you can think of at any time.
Kind of weird. I want to hang out there.
I do too.
Because we fit in so well.
Don't look at me. I'm normal.
They requested that Woody get psychologically tested too, because they were like, maybe he's just a little bit off of his rocker. So he did. He literally did go and get all this testing done. And you can go online and see the reports that the doctors
put it in the back of his books.
He did. One interesting side note that I found to this, and John Keel mentions a little bit of it in the Mothman book, but you can find it elsewhere. There was one doctor in particular, his name was Morgan, Dr. Morgan. He was the main psychologist that they used from Parkersburg, and he did the full case on Woody and claimed him to be completely sanely fit and just normal as could be. And as soon as he was done with that case, he started having problems with Indrid Cold too. He claims he's never met him face to face, but he would literally just be sitting in his living room watching TV in the evenings, and Indrid Cold would come over the top of the house and talk to him in his head.
I think the doctor had issues.
I don't know, but he claimed this, that Indrid Cold never came to his house, but would float over the top of it and be like, "Hey, I'm floating over the top of your house right now. You want to chit chat?"
Silence of the Lambs. Oh,
Good grief!
Yeah,
That's crazy.
Yeah. So, and Woody's last, like, really big claim that I found really interesting was that apparently he was invited to go to Cape Canaveral and to talk with the NASA scientists there about exactly what had happened. And they grilled him too, like the police officers had did, for like a good 3 or 4 hours. And they actually in turn showed him the star map and pointed to this little tiny speck on it and said, "This is where they're from, the people that you're talking about." And Woody was like, "You're honestly fessing up here that you know where they're from?" And they were like, "Yeah, we've known all along." And they actually gave him a little collection of like souvenirs to go home with. And one of them was supposedly a scrap of material from one of our astronauts' spacesuits. And he claimed it was the exact same material that was on Indrid, only in silver and white, which was our colors.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. In fact, he claimed, so the dude's name that called him and brought him down was Captain Bruce Parsons of NASA.
Nice.
And said he talked to a lot of the scientists there. They were in and out discussing everything that he'd seen and kind of corroborating what he knew already. They were like, "Oh yeah, we know all about this. We just wanted to verify that you were legit."
So they already knew.
Crazy.
NASA already knew about it. Is that what?
NASA supposedly already knew, and they wanted to get his input on it to see if he was legit, I guess, to see if he was actually talking with them also.
I'd like to see that report. because that lends credence to the the theory of kind of what was it, Lockheed's CEO, when he said, "If you can think of it, we've already done it." Basically, I mean, it's not a direct quote, but basically, yeah, that's kind of crazy to think about.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah. So there's the main brunt of the beginning story of him. Now, he has interaction with more people and a lot more with Woody and Woody's children, not with the wife. He actually they got divorced just a few years after that initial sighting. His wife ran off with one of the paranormal investigators that had come in to investigate
Nice.
the story. She fell in love with him and vamoosed with that dude. So it was basically through Woody and his children that this story has kind of lived on, and you get to hear more about it. You find out way more about Indrid's family and the pilots and stuff that come with him from his planet. What is it?
Lanulos.
Lanulos.
In the Ganymede universe or whatever it is.
Yeah. He has a
call it.
wife named Kimmy, I believe. And God, there's also, I wrote down some of the names I was reading just because it was fun to say. So we've got like Kimmy, Clinol, Dimo, Ardo, Cleta. This is pretty fun stuff.
Conard.
Yeah, throughout the years, they just kind of educate Woody on the ins and outs. He claims that they took him up in their spaceship and they took him back to Lanulos, and he got to see what their planet was like. They flew him all over the place. They actually at one time ran into some other types of aliens, one that they called humanoids. And they warned them against the humanoids. Don't have anything to do with the humanoids. They're the ones that come and they take people, and actually made the claim that they were the ones that took Betty and Barney Hill.
Yeah.
Yes.
They'd steal anything that wasn't tied down.
Yeah. So
I saw a picture. I'm gonna see if I can find it, because I think this topic kind of struck a chord with me because of my daughter's experience. I don't know. You guys remember me telling you about that? Seeing in our bedroom a smiling man in the window.
Yes.
And he had big eyes. And this picture of the humanoids.
Yeah.
Kind of struck a nerve with me. I want to see if I can find it. I don't know if I can or not, but I'm like, wow. I mean, because the way she described it, because she will not go in our bedroom with the light off. Refuses to. And I'm like, how could you see it? Because we have a giant bush in front of our window, but I don't know. It's kind of weird. But I mean, I'm taking her at her word because of my experiences.
Right.
Now I'm questioning, is this something hereditary? Is there something going on deeper in my line that I'm not realizing?
Maybe.
That's a good question. Yeah.
Is it that picture that has them kind of turned to the side? You can see their weird hair. They said that Woody said that their hair sprouted out of these little spots, almost like pin feathers on a bird. So if you look at the picture, it almost looks like one of those guys who've gotten the really bad hair plugs from like the 80s.
No.
And they're spaced really far apart. Yeah. Their heads are oddly shaped to the back.
Yeah, I can't find that picture right now.
For some reason.
Yeah, I'm looking myself.
Picturing like a duck sitting on their head for some reason when you said pin feathers. Oh, Enzo said they have Barbie hair.
Sounds kind of like it.
It does.
They're probably bald and they just do that to try to fit in.
Trying to get hair plugs or
Maybe.
something.
Hair plugs, yeah.
Well, yeah, I can't find it, but it's kind of struck a nerve when I saw it. Jess, you described it exactly. That's the one I saw. I'm just seeing a lot of the smiling man and Indrid Cold and all that guy, But yeah, I think that's why this really kind of struck a nerve with me because of my daughter's experience, what she's talked about. Because she's only 6. And I try not to discount what she's saying or what, especially little kids when they say stuff like that, because I don't want them to shove that completely out of their mind because of what could be possible.
Yes. And that's a good way to do it, because that's how you lose some of that.
You want your kids to have an open mind.
Right. And she's mentioned it more than one time, anytime she needs to go in her bedroom or whatever, because they'll use our bathroom and our bedroom more than they do the one off the dining room. But she's like, can you turn the light on? I don't want to see that guy again. Because it freaked her out.
It freaked me out too.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It did me when I had that experience. And I just liken it, because with my experience, when I say it's a fox or it looked like a fox grinning at me, could it have been the same thing? I don't know. I mean, I especially with this topic, when I started really diving into it and seeing the pictures, I'm like, man, could that have been it?
Well,
maybe.
I don't know.
I can't. People, parents know when their kids are fibbing.
Right.
When they're making up something to get a little of attention from you, know.
Oh, absolutely.
So I can't imagine that she was making that up. You would have probably known right away. Yeah. And I'm a firm believer, like, if a kid tells me something, I believe it first and then debunk it later if I need to, because I don't know what they truly saw. And to sit there and tell somebody that you weren't even in their presence when they saw it, regardless of them being a child or not, and just saying, oh, you're just full of it, is not cool.
Right.
No,
you don't. You weren't there. You don't know.
Yeah, that just makes them second guess themselves.
Exactly. And it's probably why we lose our abilities to see this stuff. I mean, children are very open and they see a lot more than what we do. And I think we lose those abilities because they've been tamped down our whole lives. People telling us, oh, you're just making up stuff. Oh, you just, you're dreaming it, or
it's your imagination.
It's your imagination. Yep. And we've learned to tamp it down, and we've lost our abilities to do particular things. So that needs to stop.
Our brain just turns it off.
Right. And I ask my kids anytime they say something weird or whatever, I ask questions about it. It's like her. I mean, I asked her, what did it look like? I mean, you said it was a smiling man. What did it look like? She's like, well, it was tall and it had really big eyes. I was like, man,
that's interesting.
I don't know. I mean, and I'm sitting there running down the line. I'm like, well, could it, what was it? Is it the same thing I saw? Was it a tall gray? Or was it a hybrid? I don't know. I mean, but it was kind of a crazy story, and I tried not to let on, hey, this is freaking me out, or I didn't, but I also didn't let her know, hey, you're just seeing things, you're imagining things or whatever either. I just want to give her that soundboard, to let her know, hey, you can come talk to me. I'm not going to judge you for it. If anything, I find it more interesting because you're experiencing some of the same things that I may have experienced when I was your age.
Yeah.
Right.
Does she know your story?
No.
That's even cooler.
Yeah. I've never. Well, see, I don't want to tell them that because I don't want it being. I also don't want it in their head either. If they're going to experience it, I want it to be a true experience, not something that they've created.
Yes. That's pretty cool.
So. But
there's always the chance that it's always the chance that they created what they saw too.
Yeah,
absolutely, there is.
So
very
See, Enzo, I've thought about that as well. They said there's plenty of stories of grays making you think they look like an owl or such animals. See, I've heard that too.
They're the silence. They're the silence from Doctor Who.
Yeah. Ooh, yes.
I would love to do a show just on that. I have a couple of books on that topic, and they are so interesting.
That would be
There's one story that I found, and it makes me laugh so hard. This lady, she was actually in Kentucky, I think she'd gone out to check her chickens because she heard them moving around at night a lot and clucking, and she thought maybe something was trying to get into the chicken house. And halfway there, she ran into a gray.
Oh wow.
And it stood there and in perfect English was just going owl, owl,
Yep.
owl, owl.
Oh
That's
And like
Your
it was
Jedi mind
willing-
tricks do not work on me.
Yeah,
Only
it
money.
was like it was willing her to see an owl, or maybe it was trying to get itself to turn into an owl to get away. And she ended up, it was so freaked out and just kind of frozen in place and just kept saying owl. She ended up just turning around and like hurriedly walking away.
So
And it
sorry,
eventually
dude.
left.
Yeah, that's
Oh my
hilarious.
God.
I would have probably
mean,
said something. No, you're not an owl, but you know,
Great.
Yeah.
great.
keep
You're
trying,
just
buddy. You'll
special.
get there.
Oh my gosh.
You're special.
Something I
You're
would do. That's
special.
Yeah,
Throw a
I
few
think they-
insults out there.
Yeah, I think they sent down the dunce on accident. Or maybe he left the ship when he wasn't supposed to.
Or maybe it was his first mission or something.
Maybe he was a trainee.
Hopefully
Yeah.
it
From
was
the
his
planet.
last.
From,
He got
from
away
the
from his
planet
handler or
Pulaski.
Yeah.
Wow.
Enzo, they're chickens, not owls, dork.
No, sweetie, they're chickens, not owls.
He just wanted some Popeyes.
What's your
You're
pointy
right.
little head?
Gosh.
Oh my gosh. Anyways, we're so off topic. We need
Yeah.
to stop doing
Well,
that.
We probably should not meet aliens. They'll probably nuke the planet.
Probably.
So before I let Pam take over, because she's going to take us on a different journey with Indrid Cold through the Hell Year series and everything, and I'm going to let her take over kind of his story. But before we touch there, I really want to discuss the Men in Black aspect that comes with Indrid Cold. It's a lot more involved than what people realize. If you move, you're going to see a lot of it in John Keel's books. But if you move beyond that, you're going to start finding a lot of incidents. For instance, what a lot of people don't know is, and John Keel did touch a little bit on this, but he really didn't go into deep detail. And I don't understand why. This is right up his alley. Just 2 weeks after Woody had that initial run-in with Indrid Cold where he first met him, a huge group of what we now call Men in Black came into the Mineral Wells town, the town where they're from, and spent an entire day going as door-to-door salesmen, selling to every house, only they never sold any product. And at every house, they had something different. At one house, they were trying to sell Bibles. At one house, they were trying to sell books. They were trying to sell encyclopedias. When they just were selling hardware. Like they couldn't tell them what kind of hardware. They were just like, we have hardware for
You want some
sale.
hardware?
And they were like, hardware. Just ridiculous stuff like this. But in the course of them trying to sell them these products, they were asking if they knew who Indrid Cold was, if they knew who Woody Derenberger was. Had they heard anything on the radio? Had they heard about it on TV? Had they heard about it from their friends? And it was just all about this incident between Woody and Indrid. It's all they could talk about. Meanwhile, trying to sell them ridiculous things like forks. And they were all...
Think of Land Shark.
They were all dressed as Men in Black. They all had that weird olivey skin. They were oddly sized. They were wearing the wrong kind of clothes. They were all driving black Cadillacs. Not specific hardware.
Yeah.
I am. I'm like, somebody tells me they have hardware, and I'm like, let's do this.
Yeah. Well, you know, I mean, most people can think of their dads or whatever, and their dad's got a bucket full of random hardware in their shop or in their garage or whatever, you know, and I do.
Yeah.
I mean, my dad did, you know, we just, hey, I need a nail or a certain screw, or whatever. You go dig through it and you don't realize you have it, or you don't have it. And you're like, well, crap, now I got to go buy some, and you only use one of them. So you dump the rest of them in the bucket, you know, so it's a never ending cycle.
Yeah. Oh, so the most interesting one of all of these cases that were happening in Mineral Wells that day, there was one that sticks out, and it came to the nearby neighbors of actual Woody's home. So they were very close. And in this particular instance, they claimed they weren't selling anything. They claimed to be Mormon missionaries, but they were supposedly from Salem, Massachusetts. And they began the same barrage of questions too, if they'd heard about Woody and did they believe Woody and was he a good neighbor and blah, 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 blah. And this point right here becomes something interesting for John Keel, because at that time, John Keel was also studying Salem, Massachusetts, because they were also having a huge flap of UFO sightings and Men in Black sightings. And yeah, you got to burn them, Enzo, the Mormon witches. So this became something very, if you read any of John Keel's books, you'll find like the man just lived on synchronicities. That was his life after a while, was just synchronicities. And this is just yet another one that was happening for him. He was studying what was happening in Salem at the same time. He was trying to juggle all this stuff. And all of a sudden he has Men in Black Mormon missionaries coming in and harassing people, about Woody. So this is all just kind of creating this really weird triangle for him.
Yeah, that's weird.
Poor guy. He went kind of bonkers there.
He killed himself. Keeled. K-E-E.
He keeled.
Himself.
He keeled over.
He keeled over.
He did. He keeled over. Yeah. So insanity and all of that with the Men in Black and everything, but it continues on. So Indrid Cold sticks around and becomes like fast friends with Woody and his family. So I'll let Pam tell you all about that.
On that note, though, I don't understand. If he is from this place that was so far advanced, I don't know. I mean, why would he stick around? I mean, I understand he's friends or whatever, but the way the story goes, I mean, it's like when they travel to his planet, it's almost instantaneous.
Yeah, it takes like 30 minutes.
Why would he live here?
Woody?
That's a question that
No,
Indrid.
not Woody. Indrid.
Oh, because he explains that in some of his stuff. He said that he was willingly leaving his family behind to come and teach humans what it was to live in peace and harmony, and it was his job to touch different lives throughout the world and to start developing this so that we would stop destroying each other. We would stop the destruction.
I mean, it's a good idea.
Yeah.
But it didn't
and
work.
he was also here to stop like the other like nasty
Humanoids.
aliens from coming in.
Right.
Yeah. They were kind of like this task force that came in and out. And he had like a lot of buddies that did this with him too. He wasn't the only one living here. He had a whole group.
And Woody did meet 2 or 3 others, if I remember right. Correct?
Yes.
Yep. Oh yeah.
Yep.
But anyway,
So, are we ready
yeah,
I'm ready.
to take the Hellier trip? Okay, so for those out there that may not be familiar with Hellier, Hellier is the child, basically, of Dana and Greg Newkirk. And they are a couple of paranormal investigators that got their start back when they were kids as ghost hunters. And they actually met because they ran rivaling ghost hunting shows, or ghost hunting websites, I should say. So that was their background, was ghost hunting. And then they started to run like a paranormal museum, and they still have it to this day, the Traveling Museum of the Paranormal. And it was about, I want to say it was 2012. Greg's website had been just left. I mean, their group was defunct, but the website was still up, and it had been sitting there. And every once in a while, he would go check the email on it. And in 2012, he goes and checks the email, and there is an email from someone in there that is like, basically, hey, I need your help. I live in Kentucky, and these little green goblin things are coming up to my house and scaring my kid, and, you know, doing all these different things. And so their big question was, number one, why are you, you know, well, first Greg was like, yeah, you know, we ghost hunt, but we would love to hear more about it. And he sends back like a 3-page email of everything that's happening. And Greg's big question was, why is this being brought to a group of ghost hunters? And not only that, but why to a group of kid ghost hunters on a defunct website? And he comes back and says, this guy's name is David Christie, is the name that he gives Greg and Dana. And he said, well, a friend of mine told me that I should contact you, that you could help. And so they were like, okay. So they, you know, asked him a little bit more. He sends them like 3-toed footprints and all kinds of interesting stuff. And then just out of the blue, all contact ceases with David. And they're like, you know, we're not, about the time they're like, okay, we're ready to get a team and come to Kentucky and investigate. They don't hear anything. It's crickets. And they're like, okay, well, that was a big bummer, you know, not really sure what was going on. So he and Dana meet Micah Hanks, which is another paranormal investigator. He's got a podcast and everything, Euphemet. And they meet him out. No, that's Jim Perry. I'm sorry. Wrong person. But Micah Hanks has the Micah Hanks podcast. They decided to go meet at Brown Mountain, which is a huge, it's in North Carolina. There is, this is where the Brown Mountain lights are, where basically you can go out there any night and watch the lights, and there's supposed to be UFOs that are coming and going from inside the mountain. So they go out there with the explicit reason to try to get abducted. That's their whole thing that they're going to try to do, is get abducted. And so Micah, while they're there, Mike is like, hey, you know, there is a secret entrance to an underground place in Brown Mountain. So they kind of look around a little bit, but they didn't find it. And they get back home and they get an email from a guy named Terry R. Wrist, which when you say it out loud, it really sounds like terrorist. And it says, why did you stop when you were so close? I have something for you. 1 week. Wrist. And they're like, what does this mean, you know? And so Greg's like, yeah, somebody's just messing with us. But they weren't sure how, because they didn't know who knew that they were actually out there. There weren't that many people. There was only a couple people that knew. And a week later, they get another email, and it says, Hellier was just a symptom. The ink and black are isolated still and third order MIA. Bear in mind, for every door closed, a window must be opened. The door is closed, the window is open. Use the numbers. Wrist. And they're like, okay, somebody's totally messing with us at this point, you know. Didn't know what was going on. So, and they started to talk about the fact that, you know, this happened to Keel too. He started getting these strange cryptic letters from, what were they called? The international bankers, I think is who Keel was getting his letters from. But they were full of all these weird misspellings, and, you know, they would be like the word window would be wind and a space and then OW off to the side, things like just weird things. And they didn't really know what to do with all of that. Well, then at one point they are going out to Hellier, Kentucky, to actually just do a little, you know, recon and see what's happening, see if they could talk to a few people and see if what they could figure out was going on in Hellier, see if they could trace down David Christie and all this stuff. Well, on their way out there, was it Carl? Now they have guys with them. Carl Pfeiffer and Connor Randall are also on their team. And these are the guys that actually created the Estes method. That, I don't know if anybody's familiar with that, but it's a really cool tool in the ghost hunting world. So they're with him, and Carl's looking over stuff, and he's like, you know, wait a minute. He's looking through another book, and he's like, it was talking about the ink and black, and he's like, wait a minute. Okay, it's it's the Secret Cipher of the Euphonauts by Alan Greenfield, and he's like, wait a minute, this actually makes sense. There we go. He's like, ink and black, that is Indrid Cold. That is who that is, who it's referring to. And the fact, basically, so this goes back to that email that they got where it's saying the ink and the black are isolated still and the third order MIA. The third order is a group. It's kind of like Keel's International Bankers. It's kind of an overarching group that's kind of pulling strings, watching what's going on, kind of thing. And he's like, okay, so that's what this means. So they go down this whole rabbit hole after Indrid Cold, trying to figure out where he came from, what all of this means. And so if you haven't watched Hellier, this is my huge Hellier plug here too. Watch it. It's a wild trip and it's so fascinating.
And they were working on a new one.
They're working on season 3. They don't have a date for it because it's just happening organically. So I am a member of their, I'm a museum member on their Patreon. And after I went back and watched Hellier again, I can tell you that they are actively investigating. Whether they say they are or not right now, they are, because some of the things that they've done on lives, when I go back and see this, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's what they were doing at the time, especially with Edith Dorpa and stuff like that. So here's Indrid Cold, just stuck right in the middle of all this. And they don't know, what does it mean? Okay, so if we're looking at Indrid Cold, then we're going to have to go look at John Keel, and we're going to have to look at the Mothman prophecy, and we're going to have to go to Point Pleasant, and we're going to have to go to Hellier and Pikeville, and it just, it takes on a life
Snowballs.
of its own. Yes, it completely snowballs. And let's see. And something that John Tenney is a great friend of theirs, and he's also big in the paranormal world. And I highlighted this because I really liked what John Tenney had to say about it, about the synchronicities, was that synchronicities might be a manifestation of the phenomena, like a way of communication by the goblins themselves. So all these synchronicities were happening to these guys. One thing was leading to another, and it's like, wherever they needed to be led, things were being put in their path to lead them in that direction. And that's kind of how this whole thing goes. Let's see, where do I want to go with that? Oh, okay. Let's see. So Whitting Darrenberger meets Indrid Cold, right? And he starts reading the secret cipher of the Euphonauts. Supposedly the whole secret cipher of the Euphonauts came from Aleister Crowley, which is, a whole another crazy thing.
That's a whole nother episode.
That is a whole series of episodes, probably.
Yeah, we've touched on him just a little bit.
Yes.
And now I have Ozzy Osbourne singing Mr. Crowley.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, that's the truth.
I am too,
about that
Enzo.
song.
And I think synchronicities happen to all of us, but most of us don't pay attention to it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. In fact, if you want really quick, I mean to butt in here, Pam.
No, go ahead.
If you want to live some synchronicities for a while, then watch Hellier. It is a very odd phenomenon, and this is not just me. This is just
they were truly freaking out. I mean,
yeah, for sure.
Anybody who watches this will also inquire synchronicities in their life. There is a scene where one of the members goes up on top of Brown Mountain and gets lost, loses a whole bunch of stuff, is trying to pinpoint where a signal had come from. And right in the spot where he should go stand is this deflated old blue star metallic balloon, which they don't think a whole lot about. But after everyone watched that episode, there were suddenly these blue star balloons in people's paths right after they've watched this particular. And it started this snowball effect, and they were getting thousands of reports. They would watch the next one, and then 1,000 synchronicities would happen to these just everyday people who were just watching it for fun. They weren't even in the field like that we are. just people watching it for fun, and then suddenly there was these 1001 synchronicities happening to them. So it's kind of a interesting development, and they talk about it in the second season, the fact that they were just inundated with all of these synchronicities starting to happen. And it actually, the synchronicities that were happening to other people that were watching the show started rolling back around to them and started becoming a part of the show. And the show almost became its own like organic living beast that was just wrapped in everything. It's just really interesting.
Talk about it's all connected. They were living it.
Yep.
Yeah, for sure. And they continue to live it to this day. It has not, you know, they don't focus every single day on Hellier itself, but it's always there. And it's always, and it seems like it'll go to sleep for a little bit, but when they start to focus on it again, all these synchronicities start pouring in again. It's like, okay, they're back, you know, let's inundate them with stuff. Let's get them on the path again. Let's get them going. And it just seems to happen over and over. Because,
it's the whole heel effect.
Yeah, there's only so much of this that you can do before you have to back off, or you will John kill yourself.
Yeah,
you know.
Sylvan, I'm sorry, forgive me if I'm pronouncing your name wrong, but he said synchronicities happens all the time for me, and it's really helpful in every way. So it's kind of cool. I'd love to hear about it. Yeah, shoot us an email or something. I'd love to hear about it.
Yeah, you always know you're on an interesting path when they start popping up really quick like that.
Either your life's getting ready to change, things around you are getting ready to change, and it's kind of like, pay attention, you know. It's an attention getter is what it is.
I was just thinking this too, Enzo, so I need to rewatch Hellier, or need to give Hellier a rewatch, since there won't be any new programming anytime soon from the Hollywood strike. Why not?
It's not like the Hollywood strike is affecting me. I haven't watched any new movies in years because they all suck.
Well, we just went and watched here a couple of weeks ago that The Sound of Freedom, but I'm not going to get into it right now.
But that's not from Hollywood.
No, it's not. But I'm not going to get into it. So I'll leave
from
that
Goya Vegetables.
Anyway, Pam. Sorry.
So no, it's okay. It's okay. So if we jump back to the Secret Cipher of the Euphonauts, book was written by Alan Greenfield, and his whole philosophy about it is that this is the code of how extraterrestrials are communicating with people through numbers, basically. And Terry Rist, he had actually applied the cipher to the Point Pleasant Mothman case, and when he applied it to Indrid Cold's name, that's where they came up with the ink and black. What I said earlier about the whole Mothman thing being more of a distress beacon, this is actually, it came into play here too. They feel like it was a distress beacon that was disguised as a contact episode. But it was a distress beacon that failed. And that's what they're seeing in that email where it says the third order is still MIA. But anyway, so Indrid Cold meets up with, wrong notes.
It's fine. My notes are all over the place too.
They are. I have this huge, you all know me. I have a huge stack over here, and I'm so excited about this one. They're everywhere.
That's why we call you notebooks.
Yeah, I don't keep.
They're everywhere.
Stuff
like
over
the
here.
books.
You guys are so much more organized than me.
As I struggle to find my notes.
I try to keep it all in my head, and there's just no room.
Yeah, that's where I'm at. I got a couple books. Does that count?
Okay, so when Greg, he actually said this is the first time that he'd taken the Indrid Cold story seriously. And he goes back to, again, why did you send this to Ghost Hunters? And by season 2, he's finally coming to the conclusion that it was sent to Ghost Hunters because of the perspective that ghost hunters might have on the situation as opposed to other people in the paranormal world. Even Keel felt that Cold might have been bogus, but you know, Woody was scared enough to go to the police about all of this. So there had to be a truth, a kernel of truth in this somewhere.
He was approached by somebody at some point. Yes,
he was. Now his
I
daughter
truly believe that.
Tanya, Woody's daughter Tanya, she kind of carried the baton after her dad died, and she wrote a book, I don't know, a few years ago called Beyond Lanulos, or 50 Years with Indrid Cold. And it's not a very big book, but she does talk about a lot about how Indrid was good to her family, how he was good to her. He knew some of his co-workers. She knew some of his kids. He had at least two boys. One was named Connor, and one was named Connard. And then he had his let's see, what was his name? And then he had Demo Hassan and Carl Ardo, that were his flight buddies. You know, they were in this with him. And at one point in 2018, December 18th, 2018, Tanya, Woody's daughter, sent out a tweet and said she just received 2 visitors carrying some devastating news. Indrid Cold, age 92, Demo Hassan, and Carl Ardo died today. When I have more info, I'll pass it on along, obit to be posted soon. But she never did post the obit.
Huh.
So, you know, what did that mean at that point? Greg and Carl and Connor actually went up and visited with Tanya. And what she told them was that it was Connor and Connard, Indrid's sons, came to her and told her that Indrid and Demo and Carl Ardo were killed in a wreck. They were in a ship chasing some humanoids, which are the bad aliens, basically. And their ships crashed, and both ships burst into flames. And so the boys convinced her that he had died. Well, then when Greg and Connor were like, you know, are you sure? Because he had talked about maybe wanting to start over. Are you sure he's dead? And she's like, well, that's what the boys told me, but maybe he's not. And then she kind of started backpedaling, you know, after that, and came to the conclusion that maybe Indrid wasn't dead. But apparently in 2018, he did supposedly die. She never did produce an obituary. But that was always interesting, that why would he need to fake his death? You know, what would it matter, really, truly, if he did or didn't? But I don't know.
Since so many people thought he was fictional anyway.
Yeah.
Exactly. So,
Or
you know.
did she fake his death?
Well, see, that's my question, is regardless if Indrid was a real person or not, how much of what Tanya brought forth was truth? Because, you know, it would be like, you know, she was in a nursing home. She had MS. And it would be like, oh, yeah, they came to see me last night, but yeah, nobody else saw them. You know, do I want to say she lied? No, I don't know. I wasn't there. You know, they very well could have come and seen her. I don't know. But I don't know. You know, it's hard to say one way or the other. There's no definite proof there. There was never anything solid that you could go off of.
Yeah.
Well, that's the whole thing about this story. There's no way to prove or disprove it at all.
Right. See, and I think one of the videos I was watching for show prep right before the video came out, and it's recent. It's been, I don't know, last couple of weeks that this video came out, said that she passed away like right before the video came out. So it's just like she passed away here recently.
She did. She passed away. When did she pass away?
May 19th. May 19th.
Yeah, May 19th, 2023. In Marietta Memorial Hospital.
It almost makes me wonder, like, regardless if he was real or not, like maybe she did that as a last ditch effort to get a little bit more celebrity off of it.
Maybe.
She's like, so if you watch Hellier, you'll get to see a lot of the interview that they do with her. Like they're right there in her room with her. And she is very, I hate to say this because I don't know this lady, you know, I don't know anything about her. But she seems a little attention grabby. And she makes these very odd comments. Like at one point, I know they asked her if, and I'm speaking as them, they were like, if we want to get a hold, if we want to be able to talk to like Indrid's family and stuff personally, how would we go about doing that? And before they could even completely get the thought out of their head, she was like, only through me. You can only speak to them through me. Mm-hmm. Like she was like trying to squelch that one real fast. Like, yeah. And I was just
it seemed odd.
I mean, if it is real, that right there to me took a lot of credence away from the story.
Well, from her story anyway.
Right. Right.
And I say that because when the guys first go to Hellier, and this is in season 1, we're talking now, I'm clear up into season 2. But in season 1, when they first go to Hellier, they do an Estes method. And they're in Jenkins, which is very close to Hellier. I think that was probably the closest place that they could find somewhere to stay. And they're out on the patio, and Connor is doing the Estes method. And when you do the Estes method, you're completely blindfolded. You have noise canceling headphones on, and you have basically an SB7, which is skipping stations, in your ear, pretty loud too. I've done it before. So what you're doing is you're listening for phrases, you're listening for words that go over one channel that you can hear skip, things like that. And so that's what he's doing. He's sitting there doing this. He can't hear anything that anyone's saying to him. And they're asking questions. And there's a couple of times that he says something about, I can't remember how he says it, but something about Carl. Well, Carl is one of the investigators there. And Carl's like, not sure what you mean, but they find out later that Carl Ardo is one of Indrid's crew. And then Connor is his son. So when it says talk to Connor, is Carl okay or whatever? Well, you talk to Connor. Well, they're thinking it's between their Carl and Connor, when it's actually Carl Ardo and Connor Cold that are being referenced during this Estes session, which I thought was fascinating because they had no clue about these people at that time, and that any of this was going to tie in together. So when it comes to that really makes me think more along the lines that there is something to at least the names, the people, stuff like that, because there was no connection there prior.
I absolutely believe he talked to someone who was named Indrid Cold, or named themselves Indrid Cold.
Yes.
Beyond that, I'm not sure.
Here it is. Here's my notes. It says he talks about Cold's family and crew. In the Estes method, the name Carl kept coming up. They thought he was talking to Carl Pfeiffer, which was part of the Hellier crew. But Cold's first mate and his best man was Carl Ardo, spelled the same way, Karl. And what they asked during the Estes method was, do you know who sent us here? And Connor says, Carl. And so Carl's sitting there going, I sent you here? What? Okay. And he says, it's you, Carl. Speak to Connor. And so they weren't making that connection until, a couple of years down the road. They're like, wait a minute. Okay, it's you, Carl Ardo. Speak to Connor, meaning speak to Connor Cold, not, the Connor with the Hellier crew. But it got a little confusing there. But once they figured that out, they were just like, and we have had this happen to our team before in the past, where, we've had stuff come up, no clue what it meant, recorded it anyway. One of them was almost 10 years down the road when we realized what it actually meant. And it seemed like, gobbledygook pretty much at the time. But when we went back to look at it later, we're like, holy cow, this makes absolute perfect sense now. And so it's those little synchronicities. Well,
we've had an exact misrepresentation of a person before, a mistaken identity. When we were at the Sally house, I was running an SB7 and just generally asking questions out loud. And I had asked, I said, who's with us here? I think I said something like, who belongs to this house? And it kept saying Mike. And we have an investigator, Mike Coy. And he was standing right there. And I was like, well, it really likes you. And I didn't think twice about it. And then a year down the road, it finally hit me. The original owner of the home, his first name was Michael.
Mhm.
And it was literally sitting there and telling me exactly what it was I was wanting to hear. But I couldn't see beyond the fact that there was a mic standing right in front of me. So I just assumed, you know. So mistaken identity.
Yes.
I felt completely stupid too.
Do you
That's
think,
me every day.
do you think that, this whole Indrid Cold story, it's lasted, 50 years.
Mhm.
Do you think it could be some form of tulpa, in the experience with Hellier?
I don't
I
know.
would say no on that. I think it's more than that.
It's very wrapped and intricate and nutty for it to just be a basic tulpa they accidentally created because they wanted it to be there. There's so much more to that story. I can't
There is.
imagine that it would just be a tulpa.
It is such an interwoven story that it's hard to just, and you can see me struggling just to focus it on Indrid Cold's
Right.
story itself, because there's so much more to it. It's hard to separate it from the rest of the story.
Yeah. Like 1,001 things are happening all at the same time in Hellier. For
Right.
instance, and they didn't even tell anybody about this until just a couple months ago, a little off fact, because they've said they can't put everything into every episode because it would be too much. Like there would be no way to edit it. But they finally let loose that very night that Pam was talking about, where they were having the where they were having the Estes session, and the whole Connor and Carl and that entire mess up, and they at the same time, so this was in there, they were hearing movement in the woods right beside them. They were out in a cabin out in the middle of the woods, so they're seeing all this weird motion and movement going on. And what they didn't tell us is that they all smoked at the time, and they had like this little makeshift ashtray that they had made out of like a soda bottle. Yeah, because they didn't, it was like an Airbnb that they had rented, and they didn't want to leave, cigarettes out in the yard. They wanted to keep it contained. And at some point that night, that thing went missing. Nobody could find it. And they ended up using something else just kind of offhand as they were finishing up for the night. And the next morning, they still couldn't find it. They all got in the car. They left that day to go and find that house again, where the goblins supposedly had come from, trying to find out where that had been again. Unsuccessfully. They come back to the cabin that night, go inside, unload their equipment, getting comfortable. And one of them decides to go back out to the car real quick to grab something they'd forgotten. And that freaking makeshift ashtray was sitting on the floorboard in the back seat where they all had just been sitting. So just that kind of weirdness is just happening constantly while they're investigating the stuff. And it's just the depths that it goes is so weird.
And all those houses in that particular area, it's a coal mining. Hellier's a coal mining town. That kind of went bust. So, there's a whole lot of old empty mines around town, and not a whole lot of people or industry anymore. And they, at one point, they go out to what used to be a railroad tunnel. It only lasted for like 10 or 15 years because it was deemed so unsafe. They quit using it. But that tunnel also hooked into a whole bunch of old mines, as well as some of the caves, opened up into it. And they got GPS coordinates from someone in Hellier. And I'll tell you what, when I go back and watch this, I'm like, y'all, somebody could have done you in and nobody would have ever found you. So many times. They were so lucky. But they go out here and they're doing a Gansfield method. I think Greg is at the time. But while he's basically got everything blanked out, and they hear someone right behind him go, "You guys," and you can hear it on the recording too. And they're like, "Oh my God, did y'all hear that?" And they are out in the middle of nowhere. They had to walk through grass that was between 8 and 10 feet tall just to get to this place after dark. And all they had to go by was obviously GPS coordinates, which is the best that you can go by. But who's to say you couldn't have walked right into an open cave in the ground, or anything.
Yeah.
But oh yeah, they were out here hearing things, and what they felt like is they might have woken something ancient up, and then it kind of rolled back over and went to sleep when they quit paying attention to it again. And yeah, I kind of agree with them. I think they probably did, but I think it's so interesting that all of this is such a tie-in to everything else. And Indrid Cold is a really integral part of it through all of it, because you do have his name coming up. That's being used in the cipher for the euphonauts to use with people, to communicate. And I know Dana, at one point, she was trying to explain how it was coming over to her that they were speaking. And she said when they communicate, it's more through emotion and color than it is words. So one word to us might convey 1,000 different meanings to them in regards to emotion, to colors, to all these different things. So it was really hard for them when they do speak. It sounds weird. It comes out weird sounding because they're having to just use this very tiny word to convey all these thousands of different meanings, that they're trying to get across to us. I thought that was really interesting part of it all. But sorry, I think I got off the rail on that a little bit.
You're fine.
What show are you on again? We should have called it Off the Rails instead of On the Fringe. It's fine.
I'm like, what?
We're actually doing good tonight. I mean, Mark and I.
We've stayed on topic pretty well tonight. It's almost like a Christmas miracle in July.
I thought something that was really cool about this too. They did figure out that they bring in the 37th parallel along with this, because Hopkinsville, Kelly, Cave City, Somerset, Hellier, they all run in a straight line. They were able to, I think Carl Pfeiffer figured that out. And all 4 points also fall on the 37th parallel. So, and that's another interesting thing.
Direct connect to us.
Absolutely, it's a direct connect over this way. It's really fascinating. And they also pointed out the fact that you would think statistically that there would be more weird activity in a bigger city, more would be reported. But a lot of the areas that run on the 37th parallel are more rural. And it's the same out that way too. All the way across the United States, there's not any great big cities that are on the 37th parallel.
In those cities,
Right?
I've always gotten a Hellier vibe.
It really, there is kind of a.
Yeah.
Maybe we should do a documentary on Caney.
Oh, that'd be fun.
After Hellier came out, Jess and I were both kind of, I don't want to say freaking out about it. We got excited about it because there are a few parallels, not completely, but there's some that we've hit stuff that we had to take a step back from because we were just like, holy crap, we don't know where this is leading. We don't even know where to go with what we've got.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like, there's been some instances, like Pam talked about this before, like where we didn't recognize something for what it was until years later because we were not mentally prepared or educated enough on that subject to kind of know what it was that we were viewing. And looking back at some of it and when it happened, I'm glad that we didn't know yet, because if we had gone any further down that rabbit hole, I have a feeling we would have been in some trouble.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah, there's one point in particular that kind of unnerves me a little bit. So it actually Phil, you guys kind of helped push us that way. So when we were getting ready to do the podcast on the gin, Pam was going back and hitting all of her gin stuff really hard and really rereading all of this other stuff. And she actually brought it to my attention. She was like, oh my God, do you remember we had a session out in the Sandhills here at the place where Pam's disappearing, reappearing house used to sit, or did sit, or sits when it's here, however you want to say that. that place is very active for us most of the times, and it gives us the most insane, indecipherable stuff that you've ever heard. But we keep all of our notes from it, and we had kept notes from this particular day where we got some insane stuff, but we weren't understanding at all what it was trying to tell us. We thought it was just blurping out just nonsense.
What's up, Sonny?
But once Pam had read through some of that Jen stuff, she made this connection back to that day, and we hunted and finally found that original write-up that we'd done from that day and realized, oh my God, we were looking right down the barrel of all this Jen stuff.
Oh,
And
wow.
had we known at the time what it meant, we probably would have gone ahead and taken that step further and probably gone down a rabbit hole we were not prepared for yet.
Yes, I would 100% agree with that.
Yeah, that would have
because we
been bad
didn't- yeah.
news.
Mm-hmm.
Because we didn't know what the heck it was talking about, we just assumed that it was just blurping out ridiculousness. We
thought it was
shut down.
nonsense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mark was there
We
for that too. Mark and Mike,
Yeah.
we were all there.
Yeah.
Yeah, we shut it down for the day and went on home, and thank goodness we did, because I can't imagine that we were prepared
Mm-mm.
for what that next step would have been. So
Yeah, not something I want to bring home to mama.
No.
And you know, this is one of those parallels, and I say parallel. It's reminiscent of Hellier and how it happened with them, is because this information's there, it's sleeping basically, but the second that one of us turns around and picks that thread up again and starts pulling on it, all those synchronicities are going to pop right back up. I know they are. I mean, they're there. We know
Yeah,
they're there.
they're just waiting.
Yeah.
We're
And
talking about it tonight. We're going to get one tomorrow.
that's very possible. Yeah. That would not surprise me a bit.
Enzo.
yeah.
But it is weird. And
Yes, Enzo. I really like the one that looks like Barbara Eden too.
He said Jen are not to be trifled with.
That's very
they are
true.
not. They are not. And that's why we're so glad that we didn't have that information at the time, because, or didn't recognize it for what it was. Because I think we could have got ourselves in a whole lot of trouble that I'm not sure we could have got ourselves out of.
Yeah.
No, we
I
would have
think
keeled
yeah.
over.
Mm-hmm.
Mother
Literally.
Nature or fate or whoever is, presiding over us, I think she kind of knows what she's doing.
Mhm.
For instance, the day that Pam and I ended up in that weird extended time pattern out there, had we noticed what was going on, I can't imagine. Would we have gotten stuck in it, or
Oh shit,
That's
that
a-
would have been bad.
Well, that's a great question, though. I mean,
Would you have
what-
ended up in another parallel universe?
Yeah, very. Could we have gotten
Like,
out of it if we were in
could we have
one?
gotten out? Yeah. It scares the bejesus out of me.
Mhm.
Oh.
I need to
Well,
go
what
out there, I
happened.
guess. I need to go out there. I've never been out there.
Oh man, I'll take
Really?
you
I
anytime.
need to go out there.
We
Yeah,
will take you out.
definitely use tick spray, because they are thick out there this time of year. They're really bad.
I ain't going this time of year. It's too dang hot.
I came home with 2 last time we were out there. That was like, what, 3 weeks ago?
Yeah.
hmm
They love me, apparently. I don't know. But yeah,
You
no,
just
so,
Are delicious, I guess.
right? They do talk about the fact, getting back to Indrid Cold a little bit, that they kind of thought, there's a whole deal with a tin can, and that really plays up when they go to that abandoned train tunnel during the Estes method, where Connor was getting confused between Carl and Connor. He also said, out of all the years that he's done the Estes method, he's never had this happen, but he had the perfect vision of a tin can, like a soup can without a label on it, pop into his head. And he says it at the time, hey, I don't know what this means. I'm just going to throw it out there. I'm seeing a tin can, looks like a soup can, no label. Don't know what it means. May not mean anything, but I've never had that happen, so I'm making a note of it. And when they get to the abandoned train tunnel, one of the first things that they see is a tin can without a label. Is that normal? Yeah, it could happen. Yeah, for sure. But if you could see the look on Connor's face when he sees it, and he's like, and it's bit a specific way, he's like, holy hell, this is the can that I saw during the Estes method. They put this in my mind. How did they put this in my mind? And if they can do that, what else can they do? And then he's like probably the one that is most likely to stand back and think through things before he steps into it. And he shook, and you can tell he's shook. And at that point, he's like, this isn't funny anymore, kind of thing. But obviously we're supposed to be here. Whatever wanted us here, that's how they got us here. They made me see that can. We get here. I realize it for what it is. And it tells us we're in the right place at the right time. And I think that's interesting about the synchronicities, because they kind of do that. They jump them from place to place.
Well,
as a road.
That one was a 3. That one was a 3rd synchronicity to it. Do you remember?
Remind me.
So later on, when they were back home and they were starting the editing process on Hellier, Carl was sitting in their living room relaxing while they were taking a break, and that's where they had their big library at, and he was just kind of coasting his eyes along the books,
the Chimera,
and there was a book up there, and it kind of caught his eye, and he got to see what it was, and it was John Keel's The Eighth Tower. And there he was like, oh, you know what? I don't know if I've ever read that one. And he pulls it off the shelf and he flips it open. And the first page it falls to, John Keel's talking about how often they will come in the form of things that are indistinguishable to us, much like a tin can.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And he went, holy hell.
Yeah, because not only did he just randomly pick this book, he randomly opened it, and that's the page and the passage that it fell open to. So it's like the synchronicity
that just gives me the chills.
A type of communication, for whatever this is, because they still aren't to this day. I don't think they're 100% sure what it. I don't think anybody knows what it is, but whatever is leading them along this path is using these as kind of road stops, to say, hey, here's your road sign to here, and we'll throw you a crumb and lead you on down the road. And it's just interesting. The whole thing is fascinating, but it gets scary. I mean, they hit a point to where some of the stuff that they're learning, there's a lot of danger involved in what they're doing too. And it's they've got one of their investigators. It's like, he's like an overeager lab. He's like, let's do it now. Let's go. And the others are like, no, put the brakes on, because we don't want to run headfirst into something that's going to get us killed, Yeah. And so you've got that. And they do get into an argument at one point over, you're wasting too much time. They're going to be gone by the time we get there. Yeah. It's just, it's neat. You get to see the whole process they go through.
He gets his warnings too. So that's the same guy we were talking about that ended up on Brown Mountain, lost his trail. He almost didn't make it down the mountain. He lost his cell phone connection. He had helicopters going over the top of him, watching him. And
I remember that.
Yeah, he was like, oh God, oh God, oh God. Now leading up to this, they'd had some kind of a weird, I can't remember what it was, if it was a weird memo to them or weird message to them. They kept getting this like, beware of the green man thing. And they didn't understand what they were like, the green man. And they thought, because a lot of the stuff was leading towards Pan. So they thought maybe it had something to do with Pan. And they didn't understand exactly what was happening. But that day he figured it out. He finally got himself off that mountain just before the sun went down. And he ended up in some weird little wooded community. There was just a few houses here and there. And he headed towards the house that was closest to him because he could see a car. And he thought, maybe I can call and get a taxi or figure out how to get back to my vehicle because it's long ways away. And he walked up on the property, and these people were not nice. They were a little hostile. And he turned around to get off the property, and there was a tree right in his way, and it had a gigantic green man cut into the side of it.
Yeah.
He even asked, is this a green man?
I remember that.
Yeah. And they were like, no, it's just an old man. But when he gets back to his car, he's he pulls off by this little chapel, and he's got Greg and Dana on the phone, and he's telling them what has happened and what he's discovered and everything. When all of a sudden there's this real sharp rap on his window, and he's like scared the crap out of him. He turned around, there's a plainclothes sheriff standing there. So he rolls down the window. He's like, can I help you? And he's like, yeah, what are you doing here? And he's like, oh, I'm out geocaching, and I'm from Pennsylvania, and I'm getting ready to head home. Been out in the woods, getting ready to head home. And he's like, I need your information. I need your ID and everything. So they take it, and they sit back there for a long time. And he was on the phone with Greg and Dana saying, don't hang up, don't hang up, don't hang up. This is bad. This is bad. And he said they took forever. And when they come back, they're like, so you're leaving now? You're leaving now? And he's like, yes, sir, I am leaving right now. Yeah. And he's like, okay, because we don't like people around here asking a lot of questions. You need to, and you're getting completely out of the state. And he's like, yeah, I'm out of North Carolina. I'm headed back to Pennsylvania. And he's like, that's what we want to hear. And so when he pulls out, he realizes there is a whole bunch of plainclothes police and sheriff all right there watching him. And they followed him to the state line.
Yeah. Wasn't the second season, if I remember right, it was about a lady that had disappeared or something like that, and they were kind of investigating the disappearances and all that, and come upon this possible conspiracy. Am I wrong about that?
No, you're not wrong about it. Her name's Amy. They got an email that was a whole lot like the email from David Christie that kicked off the whole Hellier thing. And it was kind of along the same lines of urgent, need help. And, so she starts telling him that, there's all this stuff going on. There's this cult in her town, and she was out camping with her boyfriend in a place that didn't have electric and stuff. And they heard a woman screaming in a cave, and they heard kids, and, her boyfriend's like, you're not going out there because there's no way we can help her. We're going to get ourselves killed if we go. And then it kind of snowballs from there. And she starts just vomiting all this information to Greg and Dana, and is like, there's this cult in town. We know that there's a ring that, takes kids, and they take them underground, and, they kill them, and they kill people, and they're doing all these different things. And she said, and I know I'm in danger because I've heard it now, so if something happens to me, this is where you need to look, basically. And she quits answering their emails all of a sudden, and they find out later she's actually in jail, and she's been jailed for a whole bevy of things. It's like, I want to say breaking and entering, for possession, for all this different stuff. And she was like a school teacher or something. And they eventually get to talk to her. They call her while she's in jail. And she's like, yeah, they've ruined my life. I'm as good as dead at this point, because there's no coming back from this. There's no getting out of these charges, so yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It is crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, and I could go off on a whole another tangent, but I'm not.
That's very Men in Black.
Yeah, it is.
It is. I will say this: if you're going to watch Hellier, don't expect to see goblins.
No.
Right.
No.
The goblins get you in there, and then it's a whole heap of what the hell.
Yeah.
In fact,
and that is why I loved it.
They had this one thing come up where somebody gave them 1 star, no goblins, and they made T-shirts out of it. 1 star, no goblins, which I thought was fabulous. I still want one. But yeah, there is a whole lot to that, and they're still right in the thick of all of that. There's so much left to uncover with all of it. Yeah.
If you're interested in the Indrid Cold side of things, watch the second season. It's really interesting. They go on this like fantastic adventure where they end up tracking down what they're pretty sure the place where Indrid Cold lived.
Yes. Yep.
And you'll get to hear all the little details and ins and outs of how they found out all of that information and how they track him down. And that leads them into the whole Point Pleasant and the different bridges and the bridge collapse. And oh my gosh, it goes off in 30 different directions. And if you're anything like us and love the paranormal and the weird, you will eat it up. It's fantastic.
For sure.
Well,
Completely.
I did find Indrid Cold's LinkedIn account. It says Indrid Cold Pilot.
That's awesome. And Enzo, you said that was in the town that you lived in too. Is it Ashland, Kentucky? I can't remember the name of it. It's Ash something. I'm not remembering off the top of my head. I think it was Ashland. Yeah, Ashland, Kentucky. Yeah, that's where, and they used the secret cipher of Euphanaut to help them break down some of the names of the places to get there, and included the Wagon Wheel Restaurant. And they were able to track down where it would have been, and they found some Sanborn fire maps that did show dwellings right next to where the wagon wheel would have been. So they have narrowed that down to where Indrid Cold lived.
So
pretty cool.
I see a road trip. I mean, Enzo could take us out there.
Oh, that would be
He
so
could.
much
He would be
fun.
a great guide. We need
Tour
to rent
guide.
an RV and a small vehicle to tow behind it.
That would be so fun.
That would be cool.
That sounds to me like a 2-week vacation.
At least, yeah.
At
You
least.
say it's cool, but then we all disappear.
Exactly.
And no one ever knows what happened to us.
Well, at this
Mhm.
point, if I get abducted by aliens, it's more of a rescue mission.
from you or the aliens?
Oh my gosh, that is
I mean,
cool.
from
Oh, wow.
you know,
Yeah.
humanity.
Enzo said when he was
See, Enzo's a celebrity. He knew Indrid Cold and everything.
yeah, we add to it.
He probably met him.
neighbors.
Yeah,
Probably walked right past his front door.
Probably.
probably waved at him while he was sitting out there in his rocking chair.
That's what we need to call the
Probably.
Jeep, the mystery machine.
Load up the mystery machine. Yep.
Yep. I mean,
It's a fascinating tale, though. I mean,
It is.
the whole thing.
it is, and like Marcus said, I mean, you can't prove it and you can't disprove it, and that's what's so compelling about it.
Yeah, that's
Well-
what makes it fun.
Yeah,
I don't think there's ever going to be a finding out exactly what happened on pretty much anything paranormal.
right.
But you
And-
know what? It's the journey, man. It's
It
the
is.
Yeah.
journey.
It is.
I mean,
it really is.
To me, this is a standard MO because the road we went down this evening has led to more questions.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And it's typical.
Like 6 more story ideas, 6
Right.
more
At
podcast
least.
ideas.
At least.
But
So.
no, I mean, I think that's a good place to leave off. Pam, what are you guys doing tomorrow night on a muck?
Tomorrow night on a muck. Kevin, good grief. Ken, from Missouri, it's his turn, and he's got a lady that he's going to have on that is pretty fascinating. Her name's Deb. I can't remember all the specifics. I apologize for not knowing that off the top of my head, but yeah, she's a great person. I think she is going to be at the Arkansas Expo. That's coming up in October.
Awesome.
So, yeah, it'll be a really good one.
She's the head of the MUFON group of Missouri.
That's who she is. I suck
Yeah.
so bad. Oh my god.
She's head of MUFON Missouri. So that'll be an interesting chit chat.
It'll be a really good one for sure. Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
it'd be
Ken's
fun.
gonna kill me.
Yeah, I enjoyed chatting with Ken when we got together here a few weeks ago. He's a pretty
He's
nice
a
guy.
great guy.
He is a
and
neat guy.
Yeah.
I enjoyed talking to him.
He's a lot of fun. We've had a really good time getting to know him, and yeah, he'll be over for the Paracon, Bordertown Paracon in September. All of them will be there. Adrian and Shauna and Ken are all coming over for that, so should be a good
If
time.
anybody's in the area,
Yeah.
September
30th.
30th?
30th, come on by.
10 a.m. to 7, right?
Yep.
Is that the
Yep.
correct time?
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I start advertising now. I mean, you guys come, it's a blast. Last year, Mark and I, we kind of covered it. The last 2 years. Shay's going to be there with her other podcast, if I'm correct.
Yep. With
This
Geeks.
year, she was there last year.
Yep.
We kind of chatted a little bit about doing a big collaboration there. We may have some other guests that we're working on getting some other podcasters up here. It'll be awesome to get up there. Awesome guys. Yeah, definitely. You guys check them out. Come on over. I mean, it's so much fun. I mean, plan now. I mean, we're 2 months out.
Enzo will be there.
Enzo will be. You want to keep, the Enzo and
The insect.
The
Well,
giant
I'm trying to think of a
teddy
cool name. It just didn't work, So, but Enzo's a cool name. I mean,
Yeah.
It's a cool name.
bear. He looks like a football player, so you can say in zone Enzo.
Just don't like it.
I bet he's heard that before.
Nah.
Probably.
I'll
But-
just call him my friend.
There we
Yeah,
go.
exactly. I mean, Enzo will be there. The Enzo, exactly. That's right.
The Enzo.
The Enzo.
But yeah, you guys come check it out. If you're anywhere close, if you're not, you have time to plan to get here. It's so much fun. The crowd's amazing. I mean, the experience is just so much fun. You get to see the different viewpoints on these different subjects that the panelists talk about. And then you get kind of start realizing, hey, I mean, you guys hear us kind of jokingly say it about everything being connected, but
It is.
we're serious when we say it. And that's what's so amazing is you have different, I'll say specialties, people that are just ghost hunters, people that are Bigfoot hunters, UFO people, you name it.
Yep.
But there's a common ground there that people come to realize, hey,
you start talking to these people and you realize you're experiencing the same things, but you're attributing it something different when it could be something different than any of you've thought of before.
And it's so fun when we get everybody together because you get all these different viewpoints from everyone's specialty, because we're going to have Brian Terrell, Jeff Hatfield, Scotty Rademacher. They're all going to be there. They're all Bigfoot cryptid guys. They have a little bit different viewpoint than some of the others of us have. But it's all great. I mean, I've learned so much from Brian and Scotty for sure. Yeah, it's going to be a good time.
Yeah.
So make plans. You guys come make plans to come check it out. Small town USA. I mean, it's the perfect description
for sure.
You guys, what is the website that people can go to check out the information for it?
Our Facebook page would be the best to go do that on, and that's just SEK Bordertown Paranormal. And then our website is bordertownparanormal.com.
Yeah,
so
definitely
Yeah,
go check it out. It'll be. Sorry, Jess, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say here in the next week or two, we're going to really start rolling out everything about the Paracon. This next week, we're going to actually this weekend, I'm going to release the schedule for the day. We have a lot of speakers coming. We're having presentations made, some big panels. So it's going to be really exciting. And we're going to start the advertisements for everybody that's coming in, all the speakers and their shows and their teams. And it's going to be it's going to get inundated, especially on the Facebook page. So everybody watch for that. You're going to start seeing everything that's going to be coming.
And the best thing of all, guys, it's free.
Yes.
It is free. And we're going to try to keep it free.
For as long as we can.
Although donations are accepted.
I was going to say they will gladly take donations because this comes out of their pockets.
Yeah.
They are so passionate about this subject. And anybody that's been around the show for a while know we're all passionate about the subject. Pam, Jess, Mark, especially. It's a way of life for them. Yep. And they're passionate, so they want to put this on for the local community, kind of get rid of any stigma for ghost hunters or UFO people or Bigfoot hunters, anything like that.
Or people who have seen ghosts, UFOs, Bigfoots.
And give them a safe place to talk about it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And what I was most amazed with, especially last year, because you had a really good turnout compared to the year before when it rained and we were under the tents and all that.
That was
but you open it up to the audience and you let them share their stories, and it's nobody judges anybody.
No, not at all.
And that's what's amazing. So if you guys want a good place to go hang out, maybe learn something.
It's a safe place.
Be a safe place and be part of this community, which I believe is expanding exponentially because of the way things are going. I mean, I can relate it to a bunch of other things I'm not going to right now, but definitely come out, check it out. This is an advertisement. I mean, you guys are personal friends, and you guys know that I and Mark will do everything we can to support you guys. Get the word out, whatever it takes. Because we're one big community.
For sure.
Absolutely.
We are.
So with that being said, guys, I mean, definitely make a point to come to it. It's well worth it. I don't really have anything else, Mark. I don't know if you do, Pam, Jess.
You know, I'm good. If we go any farther, we're going to go so far down the rabbit hole.
Right.
We'll be talking at dawn.
Do go
Yep.
watch Hellier. It's on YouTube and it's also on
Yeah.
Amazon Prime. Both.
Oh, Enzo said, you guys want to do a Hellier road trip when you have it in your own backyard. Plus, it's an easier drive.
That's
That
This
is true. That is
That
true.
is very true.
Yeah.
And we're
Sweet.
familiar with the locals.
What's up, Sonny? Man, we're just now getting ready to jump off. Unfortunately, so,
I do have one thing. So here at the end of the week, check out Kindred Insights. You can get it on Spotify and on Facebook and stuff. Tomorrow I'm getting ready to do an interview on her
Sweet.
show. So I'll be
Awesome.
on
Nice.
that. She'll release it towards the end of the week here. So check that out. I'm going to plug the Paracon on it. And I think we're just going to have a general talk about just the paranormal and just kind of the ins and outs of investigating and stuff. So it should be pretty fun.
do you guys
Nice.
have a kickoff date for your podcast?
We
you
do
guys
not yet.
Or are you
We've
waiting
got
No.
all
for
the
the
equipment in. Pam's elbow is no longer broken, so I
Well,
can
good.
Yep.
actually.
Pam
hold
broke her
stuff in
elbow, so that
hand.
kind of put the kibosh on it for a while. And we're getting crazy busy with the Paracon. I have a very good feeling it's probably going to be more towards the end of the year when this happens, because we're getting ready for crunch time.
Yep.
It's about ready to get crazy up in this house. So
Poor Mike.
it really is.
Not only is Paracon coming, but Halloween is getting ready to hit.
Yep.
So,
Yeah, I put
It is.
on The Nightmare on Bradley, so we're prepping for that right now.
That's
Get
another
ready,
thing,
get
man.
in.
It is so
Yeah.
awesome, guys. If you're local and you have little ones, even if you don't have little ones, come get a funnel cake. I mean,
yeah, go check it out.
the Nightmare on Bradley is so cool to walk through. My kids love it. We've been there a few times. I mean, because we live quite a ways away from Caney. But last year we made a special trip over to go there. I think that was about the only stop we made in Caney with my kids. And it's such an awesome place. I mean, Jess
Oh,
and
thank
her
you.
family put a ton of work into it. It's well worth
They
it.
do.
I mean, it's
It
entertaining.
is. It's amazing.
Yeah.
It is.
It's probably gonna be nutty this year. So the Southeast Kansas Amuse magazine that our team actually got the cover of it last year for the fall season. This year the Nightmare on Bradley is gonna be featured in it.
Oh, awesome.
That's so
Sweet.
cool.
Awesome, but not awesome at the same time. We put through, I think the final count was 838 people last
Wow.
year. And that was without being in a magazine. I can't imagine
Yep.
what's going to happen this year. I may not
So-
come back after October. Yeah, I just might be dead in my yard somewhere.
So I'm going to ask on behalf of Jess and her family, since they do this on their own, donate candy, donate funnel cake supplies. Reach out to Jess and offer to donate this stuff.
Yeah, we absolutely take donations. A lot of people do give us candy. Occasionally Walmart will actually donate a few
cool.
bags. So
That's awesome.
and just so everybody knows, I always like to say this because it went like gangbusters last year. So if you come to our haunt, we offer bins for you to put your unwanted candy in that your kids don't want to eat, or maybe if they're overloaded with candy and you don't want them taking home all of that candy, you can dump some of it off there. And all of that candy goes to the Blue Star Mothers, and the Blue Star Mothers
That's
distribute that among our vets, and they're sent overseas to people who are in away from home. And leftover candy goes to the vet hospitals.
Yep, that's awesome.
In our areas. And if you're interested, the Blue Star Mothers across the entire US do this. So look for your local chapters if you don't live near here.
In your community, just
Yep, that's
Yeah,
awesome.
just look it up and they will take any of your unwanted Halloween candy and it'll be redistributed out to our servicemen and women. So
If you don't know where to look for them, check your local library, because I know our particular one is a drop off for Blue Star Mothers.
Yeah.
But if they're not a drop off, they can get you in the right direction to find out who is.
Absolutely. Yeah, it went great last year. I told these guys, I think we gave them 50 pounds of candy. Like a huge, this like gigantic, I couldn't even hardly lift that sucker. It was so big. And the kids were just so happy to give to our servicemen and women and our vets. They were just literally, without looking, just dipping into their pumpkin pails and just shoving candy
Yep.
That's awesome.
down into these boxes. So yeah, I was so proud.
Yep.
That's
that they
awesome.
would
You guys
do
did an
that.
awesome job. I mean, you guys really
Thank
did.
you.
I mean, you guys.
It's a lot of fun.
Yep. So, guys,
Yeah.
there's 2 events happening over in Caney within the next few months. Make a point to go. Go support the Paracon, and go support the Nightmare on Bradley. I mean, like I said, Jess has fun with it, and make it worth its while.
And you'll get funnel cake. We serve to the
Absolutely.
adults too.
Yep.
Everybody
Funnel
gets
cake.
some.
They
It
get
is
funnel
not
cake
a
and
flyover town.
candy. But
Yep.
folks, we appreciate you hanging out, especially in the chat. It's a lot of fun. If you're just listening, come join us Monday nights, 7 p.m. Central. Come join us on the live, either on YouTube, Twitch, and Facebook. So come hang out in the chat and join there. I mean, we enjoy the comments. We enjoy the interaction with you guys. So with that being said, we appreciate you guys hanging out, and we'll catch you next episode.
Y'all have a good night.
Bye.
Good night.